I'm 63 years old, and today I'd like to share my top 4 pieces of advice that I would give to my 30-year-old self. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, my name's Rose, and this is my channel, Retirement Recharged, where we talk about everything having to do with retirement. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe and like if you do like this channel so that I know I'm on the right track. I'm trying to build up my subscribers. I really have very little right now. It's a new channel. My plans are to post once a week, maybe even twice a week. And now right to it, my top 4 pieces of advice I would give to my 30-year-old self, being 63 years old now and retired for over 10 years. Number 1, I would say, don't take the easy road. And that's exactly what I did. If you watched my prior videos, I dropped out of high school in 9th grade, which was when I was 14 years old. And at that time, our family was going through a divorce and just a bunch of changes. And I was having a hard time coping with it. And I just felt like I wasn't fitting in anymore in high school because I just transitioned from 8th grade to high school. And it was really difficult for me. So I took the easy road. You know, my 14-year-old brain couldn't really think past turning 15. And to me, it was just easier to not get up and go to school. Now, my mom, God love her, she influenced my life so greatly. She lives in another state right now, but my mother at the time told me, you're not going to sit around at home because you don't, in Arizona, you don't have to go to school once you're in the 9th grade, once you're 14. You just have to go through 8th grade, I guess. So once I heard that, I was like, I'm out. So my mom, she had remarried by then, and her husband, my stepfather, had a jewelry store. So my mother, she said, you know, you're not going to sit around at home. If you're not going to go to school, you're going to work at the jewelry store. And begrudgingly, I went. But I have to say that that was one of the pivotal moments in my life. Because of that decision, it taught me a trade. I learned how to do jewelry repair. But it also taught me to interact with the customers that came into the store. And that was invaluable because I learned to talk to people, adults, who obviously were older than me. They were shopping in the jewelry store. They came in to have things repaired. I had to solicit information from them. I had to learn how to cooperate with other employees and how to get along with others in the workplace. And, you know, dress professionally and really hold yourself in a professional manner. And at 14 years old, I had no clue how to do any of that. So it was my mother pushing me and urging me to do that. Well, it wasn't really urging me. She forced me to do that. It was that or go back to school. And that would, like I said, was a pivotal moment in my life because it taught me how to communicate. That was the number 1. So again, don't take the easy road. And that turned out to be a harder road for me, but it was the best road for me. So number two advice is don't give up on yourself. At 19 years old, I became pregnant and I wasn't married and had my son when I was 20. And I didn't think very highly of myself, but an opportunity came to me where I was able to get a position with local government here driving a garbage truck. And that was one of the greatest opportunities because it afforded me the ability to take care of myself and my son, to get an apartment, to pay my own bills, to have benefits for both of us. We had medical, dental, you know, everything. Now, at the time, I didn't think that that would be a career. And I knew I was lucky to get that job, but I also didn't think that I could do anything else. With a 9th grade education, and I did get my GED, I just didn't have the confidence in myself to pursue anything more. So working with local government, there's all kinds of opportunities out there. I wasn't aware of them because I just started with local government at that time, the local city here. But I had a supervisor, and she took a lot of interest in me. Um, her name was Mary Jane. Shout out to Mary Jane if you happen to be listening. It's probably not, but that was another pivotal time in my life. Mary Jane saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and she said, "You're much more than just a garbage man." You know, the city, the local government, the city here, they have tuition reimbursement, and that's something you should look into to go to college. And I thought, you know, I barely got a ninth grade education. I'm not smart enough to go to college. So in my mind, that wasn't even a seed, and that wasn't planted anywhere. I had no concept of going to college or what that would bring me. But she kept talking to me about it. She herself was going to night school, and she said, you know, it's not the same. You're with other adults, so you're going to school at night. Just take one class. You know, she said, just take one class and see how you do. And I think that one class was really like an introductory to college for adults returning to school. And so I took that class, and you had to do some writing, and they kind of like evaluated like where you were and if you were at a point where you could go to college. And I passed that, and I got a lot of good feedback from the instructor. So I thought, well, maybe this is something I could do, you know, and I started to feel good about myself at that time, because I realized I'm not the 14-year-old that dropped out of high school. You know, I'm 20 something now, and I have a child that I'm taking care of by myself. And maybe I'm not, I don't want to say as stupid, but maybe I'm smarter than I thought I was, you know. And you have to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, who will? You know, you're your number one fan, and you need to remember that. So the second piece of advice I would say is don't give up on yourself. So going back to school, it really did change everything for me, my path going forward. Now, to be honest, it took me 10 years to get my degree, because I went to school at night and I was raising a child. But after 10 years, I had a bachelor's degree that didn't cost me anything, a bachelor's degree that my employer paid for. And by that point, over 10 years, I learned a lot about myself, a lot about others, how to advance. I learned about the career paths that I could possibly take. So the third piece of advice I would give my 30-year-old self is don't take yourself so seriously. Take your career seriously, which is what I did next, was to plot out where I wanted to go in my career, what my career path would be. And I took it very seriously. But don't take yourself seriously. I was in what they call a non-traditional occupation. I was one of the very few females in that position. In fact, I think I was one of the first females to drive a garbage truck for local government here. But then as I was going back to school, I transitioned out of that role, and I got a promotion, and I became involved in what they call code enforcement. So in code enforcement, I wanted to do a really good job, and I took myself very seriously. And again, I was one of the very few females in that position. So to me, integrity was important, and I wanted to do the best job I could, and I wanted people to take me seriously in that job. So I didn't really share a lot of myself with my coworkers, who were mostly males. So I didn't like leave myself open. I didn't interact too much on a friendly basis. It was more work. And in the long run, I think that really affected me, in that I wasn't belonging with the rest of them. In fact, I had once I promoted even further, became a supervisor, I had a foreman who worked for me, and really nice guy. And he was like a stand-up comedian all day at work. I mean, he made people laugh. They enjoyed being around him. And I wasn't like that. I mean, I think I'm pretty funny, but not at work. I was there to work. And like I said, I was one of the very few females there. So I felt like I had to be a certain way, I had to present myself a certain way in order to be taken seriously. So I didn't interact in a humorous way with very many people. I didn't, deviate from the script of being a supervisor at that point. And he came up to me one time and he said, he worked for me for at least 2 years, but we worked around each other for my entire career, 28 years basically. He came up to me and he said, "You are one of the most misunderstood people." And what he meant like that is because people didn't know me. They didn't get to know my personal side. They knew I had a child at home, and that was pretty much it. But because I didn't open myself up and let people in at all, I missed out on that belonging, but I also missed out on some promotions because once you get to a certain point, it's who you know and how they feel about you as well as what you know that gets you promoted. It's not just one or the other. I mean, you can be a great person and everybody loves you, but you're not competent. You're only going to promote so far before your competency starts affecting the people you work for. But at some point, you have to be both. You have to be personable. They have to know you. They have to know they can trust you, and you have to be good at your job. And because I took myself so seriously, I never achieved that, and so it affected me getting some promotions. And at some point, I reached about as high as I was going to go in that field, and I had to look at going somewhere else. And I own that 100%. I got in my own way. And at the time, I didn't see it that way. But I can tell you now, looking back, and the things I've learned over the years from that point, I got in my own way. And a lot of people do that. They get in their own way of promoting. So I would say, number 3, don't take yourself so seriously. Number 4, and this is important, and you've heard this from everybody talking about, your younger self, advice you would give is to save. So I would say don't forget to save, but don't forget to reward yourself too, so you don't burn out along the way. You can't work, and save, and not have that much of a life. I mean, you're building a life with a family. At my time, when I was doing this, it was my son. I had a young son at home, and I wanted to have memories for us, and I wanted to be able to do things for us. So you have to save, and what I like to say is you want to work hard, you want to play hard, and you want to save hard. Those are the 3 things that are important. So it's important to save for your future because you want to get to a point where you can retire someday. And yeah, we'll have Social Security, hopefully, going forward, but you have to be able to help yourself too. You can't just count on one income stream. You have to have multiple income streams. So if something happens to one, you have the other ones to fall back on. Kind of like that whole don't put all your eggs in one basket. The other thing I did was to increase contributions that I made to my 457. In that respect, what I did was every time I got a raise, a cost of living raise, which was every year, whatever that amount was, went right into my 457. So my paycheck, it still grew a little bit because I put it in my 457, I didn't pay taxes on that either. So I actually got, maybe 10, 20 bucks extra every time I got a cost of living because I put it in my 457, it wasn't taxed. My paycheck actually increased a little bit. So I kind of got to see a little bit of that, even though I was moving it all to my retirement account. But it's just as important to reward yourself along the way. And when I'm talking about rewarding yourself I'm not talking about going into debt. I'm not talking about going on vacations that you put on your credit card and then you spend the next 5, 10 years paying for. What I'm talking about is the little rewards. And what I did was 3-day vacations. Like you take a Friday off and you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And sometimes it wasn't even leaving. It was just going to the lake, which we had a lake nearby, so we would go to the lake and spend the day there. I did decide to purchase 2 jet skis at one point because we went to the lake so much. It was nice to get out on the water. I couldn't afford a boat, so I got these 2 jet skis, and my son and I would go out and just have a great time on the water. And that was something that was important to me, just to build memories with him. And I allowed him to go on vacations with my parents while I was working so that he could still experience the things that I couldn't afford to give him. But it was important that I had that time as well. When he was off with my parents, I could be by myself. I could get away from being a parent for a couple days or a week or whatever it was. So you have to reward yourself along the way. It's very important to work hard, play hard, and save hard. So those are the top four pieces of advice at 63 that I would give my 30-year-old self. So I want to thank you for staying tuned and watching my video. Again, please subscribe and like if you like this video, and leave a comment. I would like to know what your top advice is that you would give your 30-year-old self. Let's keep the conversation going. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you again real soon.